This is a very special Spitfire. It's PL983. This lives at Duxford Air Museum, and it's worth saying straight off, this flies. This is the great thing about Duxford Air Museum. It's not just dusty things sitting around, real working exhibits. Whenever I go to Duxford, I seek out certain planes, and this is one I go to see every time. So it's a Mark 11, it's basically a Mark 9 modified for photographic reconnaissance. You see a camera mounted there, and it's one of only two airworthy PR Spitfires in the world. Photographic reconnaissance, very important before satellites, as you can imagine. Absolutely fascinating, well worth another video just on that. So it was designed to fly at high altitude and very long distances. The PR blue livery is there for camouflage, and all the guns have been removed to make room for extra fuel tanks for increased range. Since it carried no armament, the only defences it had were height and speed. So a bit scary, and not an easy job for these pilots who were suffering from the extreme high altitude conditions in unpressurised cockpits. PL983 first flew in October of 1944 and saw active service from 1945 onwards. And after the war, the airframe was gifted to the American Air Attaché for use as his personal transport. And for people like me who like these old planes, this is affectionately known as L. And it gained that nickname because it's a Mark 11, but also in honour of one of its former pilots, Lettice Curtis. You'll see her name written on the side there. During the war, women weren't allowed to fly in combat roles, but they did fly these planes and were absolutely essential to the success of the air campaign. Lettice was a member of the Air Transport Auxiliary, the ATA, and their job was ferrying the planes from the factory and between airfields. They were truly the trailblazers for women pilots, and Lettice herself was the first ever female pilot to be qualified to fly the heavy four-engine bombers like the Lancaster. After the war, Lettice was invited to fly PL983 in a number of civilian air races, and in 1948 Lettice flew the Spitfire at the Lim International Air Race and broke the national 100-kilometre closed circuit record in it.
There was a good entry and many thrills during the air race meeting at Lim. Miss Lettice Curtis, a wartime ATA ferry pilot, was competing in the 100-kilometre closed-circuit event, flying a Spitfire. Miss Curtis set a new international and British women's record with an average of 313.07 miles an hour. They rather cheer for that.
After that, the aircraft changed hands a few different times, was on display, eventually being restored back to airworthiness, actually had a starring role in the TV series Piece of Cake, and most recently was part of a project that raised over £130,000 for NHS charities together. People donated money and in return had their name written on the fuselage. So if you're ever at Duxford just enjoying a bite to eat by the side of the airfield, and keep your eyes peeled because Elle might be rolling past you at any moment.
Well, it's not a bad place to have your lunch, is it?